Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and part two of the explosive parliamentary return after summer today. And Boris Johnson has been defeated as expected. More about that in a bit. I want to go through some of the debate points first of all before I get to the result. Of course, I'm sure most of you know the result anyway. But first, if you find yourself enjoying the video, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the channel. So, first of all, the historical context. This is the first time that a Prime Minister has been defeated in their very first vote as Prime Minister since Pitt the Younger. This was during the Napoleonic era, quite a while ago. Now, in terms of the debate, I'm not going to go through lots of it. Do you know what? This is like March. It's deja vu again, when Parliament were debating and challenging the government to make sure that we didn't leave without a deal. This is, of course, much more explosive because Parliament is now not only having to compel the government to behave as they need it to, but they're faced with a government who just may not do that. So Sir Oliver Letwin, first of all, he was asked about, by Peter Bone, I think it was, the importance of, if you want to be in a negotiating position, you have to be prepared to walk away. That is what the Brexiteers try and pretend is really important. Now, unfortunately for Letwin, he's quite a clever bloke, but he responded by saying that actually when the Conservatives formed a coalition with the Lib Dems, they ignored that negotiating wisdom, formed their coalition, and it all worked out. Unfortunately, someone then shouted out, and then they got wiped out, which was, of course, true for the Lib Dems. Wasn't the best analogy, I thought. Much better if Letwin had have actually pointed out that at the moment the EU are assuming that we're going to be leaving without a deal. That is their assumption now. They're not convinced that Parliament can stop Johnson. They're even discussing the prospect of labelling a no-deal Brexit as a major disaster. Now, the reason for this, it's not just words. It would then allow the countries most badly hit to be able to access emergency funding to allay any economic worries. So they're absolutely anticipating a no-deal Brexit. Has it brought them to the unicorn farm? No, it has not. No, it has not. The negotiating position, this fantasy has been exposed. The other thing that did not happen in March, the thing that stops this being deja vu, and I'm so pleased, you had a super important debate tonight. Now, I had some various people on Twitter saying, well, there's not many there. There were towards the beginning when you've got the heavyweights speaking, and then as it goes on, some people sort of leave and go and have a cup of tea in the House of Commons tea room. But one person that was taking a full and active role in it that did not during the March debates, I'm glad to say, was Jeremy Corbyn this time. Much more of this sort of behaviour, and he might actually be able to turn the fortunes of Labour around. Obviously, he would need to start with a manifesto that sets Labour apart from the Conservatives, instead, of course, hiding in their shadow on Brexit, and then take the fight to Johnson and Farage come to it. Much easier against Boris Johnson. Much easier. And, of course, much easier if no deal is stopped. If no deal is prevented on the 1st of November, if we're still in the EU, Boris Johnson sunk. Absolutely knackered. Completely. Boris Johnson himself was not there for these debates. These debates that he took so seriously. He's so afraid of that he has prorogued Parliament to try and reduce the amount of time that they can get this bill through in. And not just threatened to withdraw the whip from Conservative MPs, he's got the Chief Whip to go out and actually tell those rebel Tory MPs that that is what is going to happen. So as far as we know, I need to check the numbers at the moment, but there's a good number of Tory MPs who voted for this, which means he'd already lost his majority today. He's sunk it now. He's got next to no majority, and that's going to be important for what I'll go on to a little bit later. But Boris Johnson, this vote that was so important, he wasn't there for the debates. He took no part in the debates. This thing that's so important, was he there trying to persuade his Conservative colleagues? No, he was not. No, he wasn't. Who did he send? Jacob Rees-Mogg. I mean, it is normal for the Leader of the House to take part in this debate, of course, and he was there. But again, was he trying to appeal to his colleagues? No, he wasn't. He was threatening them. Did that work? No. In fact, Jacob Rees-Mogg tried to argue against the validity of the debate itself. During the debate, he was trying to say this debate is invalid. But it's already taking place. What's the point? Why didn't he argue against its validity before the debate was decided that it could take place? Before it was granted? So stupid. And when asked directly if he would seek to prevent royal assent, Jacob Rees-Mogg did say that the government obeys the law. Now, that's not quite what his cabinet colleagues are saying. It's not quite what the Prime Minister has been hinting at. But it is nice to hear at least one senior cabinet member saying that he would intend to obey the law. Of course, if it isn't granted royal assent, then it won't be law. So either he's just not as dumb as his colleagues in threatening criminal behaviour, or he's confident that the Queen will do what the Prime Minister advises. And there is a suggestion that the Prime Minister will advise the Queen not to grant it royal assent if it gets that far. But the bottom line is, in terms of the debate, Parliament's in favour of the debate. And it is the Speaker's job to follow the wishes of Parliament. They're not the lapdog for the government. In fact, he even used Johnson's words. The Speaker said, "I will always facilitate Parliament, do or die." To raucous laughter and clapping, of course. Now, in terms of the parliamentary numbers as they were, sort of changing tonight by the looks of it. So the government now, or at least a few hours ago, had 319 MPs. That is 309 Conservative MPs and 10 DUP MPs who will back them in a confidence vote, which means the opposition have 320. Now, not all of those opposition MPs would necessarily oppose Boris Johnson, so it's not as clear-cut as it seems. But given that Boris Johnson will have shed himself of at least, I think, 17 Tory MPs or thereabouts, I mean, wow. Okay. Wow. It's a proper minority government now. The DUP can't help him. It's a proper minority government. So, like I say, in terms of where this is now, I'll go through the results in a bit. It now goes through the Commons tomorrow. So it's been voted through. There will be further readings tomorrow in the House of Commons. There will be attempts to amend it. Now, there are 17 Labour MPs who want to leave the EU. Not all of them are in favour of no deal, I hasten to add. Only about 3 of them are, I think. But the other ones still want to leave the EU or are in constituencies that they think they'll lose their seat if they don't back this position. And they are going to attempt to amend the bill to bring Theresa May's withdrawal deal back into the reckoning somehow. So, I mean, it's normal during these readings for people to propose amendments. They'll be voted on. It's fine. It's not going to stop this going through the Commons tomorrow. MPs will either vote for it or against it. You would think they will vote against that. But, you know, that's the situation there. The other thing that will happen is, so if this is expected to go all the way through the Commons tomorrow, which means it then needs to go through the House of Lords for its readings. So, just like when the Cooper Bill was being proposed before summer, and even though the majority of the Lords were in favour of it, with amendments, there are Brexiteers in the Lords. They're in the small minority, and they sought to use delaying tactics so that it would run out of time. And you can't do that in the House of Commons, but you can in the House of Lords. You can filibuster. So their plan this time round, because it didn't work last time, but their plan this time round, where there's much more limited time, is they have proposed about 92 amendments, and they want each one voted on twice. So they reckon each of these amendments can take an hour. So you're talking 90 plus hours. Obviously, we can't afford for them to be wasting time with 90 plus hours. So what do you do about that? So this is going through the Commons tomorrow. That means the Lords are getting ready for this tomorrow or today, depending on when you're reading this, Wednesday. Wednesday it's going through the Commons, which means the Lords has Wednesday to make sure that people can't scupper it on Thursday. what I know is when the Cooper bill was going through the Lords, in order to try and restrict these delaying tactics, something called a closure bill, something like that, was used. Basically, when there's a large majority of the Lords really want something to go through and they don't want the delaying tactics, there are devices that they can try and use to hasten the process up. So they're laying the groundwork for that tomorrow, today, whenever you're watching this, Wednesday at any rate. Then hopefully it will go through the Lords on Thursday. If it does, then it goes back for a final little reading in the Commons, and then it goes off to the Palace to be signed into law. It's important that this happens before Parliament's prorogued, of course. Assuming Parliament is prorogued, we're still up in there about that. Maybe you know more than I do at this point, I suspect not. There was the first day of the full hearing in the Court of Session today, but, you know, court cases can take a little while. Hopefully this one will not take all week. And then if it does go through the Lords and it is, you know, finishes off in the Commons and it goes off to the Palace, the government will attempt to advise the Queen that she should refuse royal assent on the basis that it's unconstitutional, which is of course nonsense. The last time the sovereign refused royal assent was Queen Anne in 1707. So I'm sort of guessing that, you know, that's not going to happen. You really wouldn't have thought it would happen. But so that's where we are now. So the results. So they got to the results at last. Hours of debates. I didn't watch all of it, I have to say. But I kept a little eye on some of it. And then, all very exciting, the tellers for the ayes came out first. That's usually a good sign, and indeed it was. So the bill, as you know, has gone through with 328 votes to 301. Okay, which is actually pretty good. I thought it might be tighter than that. So that's very decent indeed. As soon as the results were called out, someone shouted out, "It's not a good start, Boris." Of course, then Boris Johnson, Prime Minister, stood up to speak, as would be expected at these occasions. And he was drowned out at first. Then obviously everyone settled down. So what he said, obviously went on the attack. He is going to do this. Expect him to do this. The situation is that Parliament has taken control. Given that he is not in control, he is now free in the strongest possible terms to say that if he were in control, he'd totally get us a deal. And that's exactly what he did. After, when it looked likely he was in control, he started umming and ahhing, oh, maybe we're not. Because it was 1 in a million chance of no deal. Then it was all of a sudden, when it looked like his tactics were winning, oh, well, we might not get a deal after all. Now it's back to, I would totally get a deal again. So ridiculous. But it works because people don't follow this narrative. And so his position is still, you have now given all the cards to the EU. Negotiations are going to be impossible. Blah, 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 blah. It's important now to put it to the people and to decide who goes to that summit on October the 17th. He said he's going to put forward a motion under the Fixed Terms Parliament Act. That means he wants to call a general election. Now, what he's saying by that, he's implying that he wants this general election to take place in mid-October so that the Prime Minister, whoever that is in place for the 17th of October to go to the EU summit. And the thing is this, though, what you have to watch out for. A lot of people will be saying, that's actually okay, isn't it? General election with 2 weeks to go. That means that if we end up with an anti-no deal parliament again, we're still free to get that extension. But the reality is, if MPs vote for this, so Boris Johnson strongly hinting he wants to do this on, you know, this whatever of October, mid-October. And everyone's going, well, that's fine, isn't it? Vote it through. And then as soon as it's voted through, then MPs can do nothing. It's happened now. And then Boris Johnson says, actually, do you know what? I think we'll have it on October the 31st instead. I want to be the Prime Minister when we go to the summit. And I want you lot to be dissolved, because they'd be dissolved at this point. No Parliament at all to interfere with him. And then he stitched him up. They're not that stupid, I hope. So we wait, and he goaded Corbyn, and the leader of the opposition, or whatever he called him, you know, wanted this. He's been calling for this. His colleagues have been calling for this. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to put it to the people. So we waited expectantly for what Jeremy Corbyn was going to say. I'm smiling, so I was not disappointed. What he said was that if he wants to put this to the people, the way he should do that is with a public vote. Strike one. Then he said that he would absolutely support a general election, but we're going to get this bill through first. Strike two. It wasn't a strike three, by the way. I'm hoping that that's going to come later. Obviously, Boris Johnson has now proposed this motion. That means there is going to be a vote. Corbyn has got to vote against it this time. And just make it clear, we're absolutely, just like I was saying earlier, we're absolutely on with this. We're absolutely fine with the general election. We're getting this bill through first before a general election. Because remember, once you trigger that general election, the Prime Minister gets to choose when it is. It's all right him saying that he wants it to be done and dusted by the 17th of October. That's what he says. He has been known to lie once or twice, you know. So that's where we are. I've not followed the debates after that. They'll be largely irrelevant for now. I hope you found the video interesting. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.